There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm here with one of my good friends, Catherine. We are diving into the book Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results, written by James Clear. Here's the book. Whoops, I'm covering. And we are on chapter 11. Um, So with that, I'm gonna just let Catherine introduce herself, and then we'll get started.
Good morning. This is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado.
And good morning, Catherine. And this is Dan Sissick in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it's just really nice. It's been nice this last week. Not really too hot, but not cold, which I hate. So loving that. And we'll get started. So this week we are in chapter 11. It says, "Walk slowly, but never backwards." And in the book, he talks about Jerry Uddlesman, a professor at the University of Florida. And on the first day of class, he divided his film photography students into two groups. And basically said everyone on the left side of the room, he explained, would be the quantity group. They would be graded solely on the amount of work they produce. On the final day of class, he would tally the number of photos submitted by each student. 100 photos would rate an A, 90 photos a B, 80 photos a C, and so on. And then meanwhile, everyone on the right side of the room would be in the quality group. They would be graded only on the excellence of their work. They would need only to produce one photo during the semester, but to get an A, it had to be nearly perfect. So, as you're probably already thinking ahead, in doing that, he realized that the people who did better were the ones in the quantity group, the ones who had to go out and they took a lot of shots, and like I said, in order to get A, they had to produce 100 photos. So in doing that, they would go out, do different pictures or shots, and try different angles and using different lenses and stuff because they have different lenses they can use to get certain like zooms and zoom out, clarity, things like that. I don't understand it all. If you've done photography, you probably have an idea of what he's talking about. But in that, he realized that because of them taking all those shots, they were honing their skills, they were practicing, they were trying new things to get more laser focused on what they were um, trying to achieve, that almost nearly perfect shot. Whereas the ones in the quality group, they had to produce one shot and it had to be nearly perfect. But if they didn't do all the other actions that this quantity group did, it seemed like their photos weren't quite as good. And in reading that, I kind of was thinking, like for me, when I was playing tennis in high school, and wrestling in high school, and soccer in high school, um, being involved in that, we had, our daily warm ups. We had our daily practice times of, just swinging and hitting a forehand shot, learning how to place a tennis ball in the far corners of the uh, opponent's side in order to get him off balance or get him out of position, so that way we could take the advantage and win the shot. On wrestling, learning the best holds and the best moves and the best ways to take down an opponent, or get him in that one move that they couldn't get out of, which oddly enough, uh, learned when I we learned a particular move called oh, I can't remember the name of it, but basically it was a move where we put our hands and locked in behind their neck and just controlled them that way. And we got that used on us in a tournament back in Ohio. So we brought that move back out here to Las Vegas, Nevada, and we just kind of creamed everybody because we knew that move and they didn't. And we were able to use and win the state championship again because of that added learning, practicing, honing in, really getting that, those things to um, you know, build up our skill and our level and our ability to be good at it and almost be perfect at it. So with that, I'm sure Catherine can explain some things that she's gone through or had to do or learn. Even being an Uber driver, I'm sure there are things she's learned and picked up and things like that. Or have you been involved in anything like that, or have you come up with things that you've learned because of practicing and things like that?
Definitely. Um, Being a nurse, there's a lot of skills that get better with time. Same thing with being an artist, doing stained glass. You learn through experience. And, I would much rather have somebody start an IV on me who has started 200 IVs than somebody who's read about how to start an IV 200 times, because there's a whole different ball game. And I know when I was a nurse and we got a new nurse in the unit, I would much prefer, I mean, I don't care if they had, a doctorate degree or something. I would rather have just somebody that has experience, because book knowledge is great, but when it comes to certain things, hands-on experience, there's just no substitution. Um, I mean, think about surgeries. I myself have had two successful surgeries by surgeons who had only done it one time, but I think I'm just really blessed because I don't know how, but I mean, every surgeon obviously does the surgery for the first time and for the second time, but when you're looking for a surgeon to do one, you kind of want one that's done it numerous times, because that's when you, like you said, that's when you learn the little things that make it better, the things not to do again, the things that can go wrong and how to get around those things, and all of that comes to experience. And I did think it was really interesting. He talks in here about how different parts of the brain grow and shrink, um, depending on activities that you do. Like they were talking about how mathematicians, the gray matter is larger in mathematicians than in other people. But when they stop doing math, that gray matter reduces in size. So there really is if you don't use it, you lose it sort of scenario going on in our brains that I don't think a lot of us are. Well, I think we're aware of it, but maybe not to that degree. Um, I know that as we get older, it's important, especially if you're retired, and you're not, like when we're working, we tend to be using our brain for something, hopefully. But when people retire, that's why you see, it's kind of iconic to see an elderly person working a crossword puzzle or something like that. They're trying to keep their brains engaged, so that they don't lose. And when you go into a nursing home, if they're a good one, they're going to have activities going on to stimulate brains and motor skills and all of these things, so that the clients don't lose those abilities. And this is why, because when you're using them, it's stimulating your brain and causing certain parts to expand. And when you're not, your brain is shrinking. And depending on what the job was, a different part of the brain was activated. He even mentioned taxi cab drivers. So I thought of you and I, Dan, even though we're rideshare drivers. And by the way, I quit driving for Uber, so I'm driving solely for Lyft now. Um, but they I think it was the hippocampus on taxi drivers that was larger. So that'd be curious if we had the ability to measure the size of our hippocampus and see if it got bigger or smaller. But I think GPS probably has made that there wouldn't be I know it, like back in the day before GPS and technology, taxi drivers just needed, I mean, they just had to memorize all the streets and stuff. I mean, we had maps, but you don't really have time to sit and look at a map while you're trying to drive and get somewhere to get somebody. So they basically just had to memorize, and I'm sure that's what caused that increase in that hippocampus. Now we have GPS that kind of tells us where to go and what to do. It's not always right, but it's most of the time fairly right. So probably not as big of a difference, but yeah. And then he was talking about habits and how it's really repetition. That's interesting because for years and years we've heard that you have to do something for 60 days or whatever. As it turns out, you really just need to do it 60 times.
Yeah, I was gonna jump out and kind of a little before that, how he talks about that. I was gonna talk about where he talks about. He says that it's easy to get bogged down trying to find the optimal plan for change, best way to lose weight, the best program to build muscle, all that. We're so focused on figuring out the best approach that we never get around to taking action. As Voltaire once wrote, "The best is the enemy of the good." And he says he refers to this as the difference between being in motion and taking action. And so I think a lot of us assume that motion and action tend to sound similar, mean the same thing, but he says they're not. When you're in motion, you're planning and strategizing and learning. Those are all good things, but they don't produce a result. Action, on the other hand, is a type of behavior that will deliver an outcome. If I outline 20 ideas for an article I want to write, that's motion. If I actually sit down and write an article, that's the action. And if I search for a better diet plan or read a few books on the topic, that's motion. If I actually eat a healthy meal, that's action. And how many of us, and me included, have been bogged down in the idea of feeling like we're taking motion or action, even though we're only taking motion and not doing the actual action we want to do? And he says, that because of this, hey, sorry, I'm house and dog sitting again, so I've got dogs. um, you know, that motion is useful, and sometimes we need to use it to plan and get our ideas and things put together. But the action is where the stuff happens. If motion doesn't lead to results, why do we do it? And like I said, it's just a way to help get us in that mode to get there, so that way when we do take action, we can get the best optimal result out of the action. But a lot of us don't like to do anything more than what is. And we talks about, he says, but most of us than not, we do it because motion allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. And I think that's a big thing a lot with people. They don't like failure, so they get stuck in the motion part, feeling like, oh, I'm moving forward, I'm making progress, but in reality, you're not doing anything. And so with that, and then he goes on to talk about some other things going on, in that, but and then leads into how long does it actually take to form a new habit, which was leading into what you were talking about, Catherine. And even I think even in the books we studied, we studied where it takes an average of like 3 weeks or this or that. Um, I think for everybody it's a little bit different. So I don't know. What do you think on that? Do you think it's a set time or a set amount of actions, or do you think it might be a little bit different for every person depending on how they're uniquely wired and set up?
It's definitely different. And I think we've talked about this before, the different or personality colors. And there's the green personality color is sort of one of the hallmarks of that color, is that they are planners. They plan, 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 but then um, don't take action. And then there's other like blues tend to jump into action with maybe not enough planning. They're like too so spur of the moment. So I think there has to be a happy medium there. I mean, you definitely need to plan things, but like you said, and like he said, planning is not doing. Movement is not necessarily action, and until you take the action, like you can watch videos on how to do sit-ups, but it's probably not going to make your stomach flatter um, until you actually start doing the sit-ups. However, I do remember, and I can't. It's been mentioned in several of the books that we've read. Actually, um, I think it was about basketball. Actually, that they had people like practicing in their mind, seeing themselves making that perfect shot, and then they had people actually practicing, and the people that were visualizing did better in the long run than the people that were actually practicing. So that's completely opposite of what he's trying to say here. So that's a little confusing. But that's the way the world is sometimes. Just um so I think it's just again balance, finding that balance, doing enough planning, but not too much planning so that you never get around to actually doing what you're doing. And then, like, one of the things, as we all know, anybody who has ever made a plan or, is going on vacation and has an itinerary of exactly they're going to go here, they're going to go there, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Shit happens. Like life happens. So you can spend 3 years making a plan, and the minute you set that plan into action, maybe even the very first step of the plan, something could change that alters and makes the whole rest of the plan worthless. So that's another good reason not to spend too much time on plans alone because it's going to change. And I think we just have to, I think each person's a little different. Like we all have different learning styles, and some of us learn better through reading, some of us through watching videos, some of us through, hands on. And I mean, to a certain extent, there has to be a hands on component for some things. Um, that goes back to the surgery. Do you want somebody that's done the surgery once or somebody that's done 500 successful surgeries working on you?
Me personally, I'm more the kind that I want you to have done 1,000 of them, have all 1,000 of them be done right, and that way I feel very confident and comfortable in what you're doing. Um, Although I have, when I was doing dental work and stuff, and because I couldn't afford the cost of the extensive, and I started it, and because of not having insurance now, I haven't been able to finish it. But I found through um, one of the through the university, the School of Dentistry, through the university here, I could get very reduced amount of costs to have what I needed done, and I started to go through them. And even though I was, like the whole time going, okay, I hope they can do this right. I hope that, but they had licensed people there with them, people who've done it, who were, knew what they were doing. It was just the teaching them of how to do it. So therefore, even though I had some comfort, and I actually found a student that I really liked. I loved her. She was awesome. She was great. She and I got along, and then she was graduating, so I got a new one. And the new girl, I just did not like. I did not get along with her, and uh, but that's another part of it. You know your mind plays a big part of that too, of what you tell yourself goes back to what you say when you talk to yourself, and what you um put in your head too is what you're wanting to do and what you're wanting to accomplish. But here in the book he talks about, and I think you kind of alluded to this, is how long does it take to build a new habit? And like you said, we've heard many different means and ways and things and stuff like that. um I've even used a visualizing aspect of it, like when I was playing tennis and learning my arm swing and my strokes and, for my forehand, backhand, for my service, things like that. But he says, but what people really should be asking is how many does it take to form a new habit? That is how many repetitions are required to make a new habit automatic. And I think that's where um, it builds in that, it's different for every person because, like for me, um, I love playing tennis and I've played it on and off throughout my life. So a lot of times I can get back out on the court, and after a little while, my memory, stuff kicks in from all those practicing all up for 6 years in junior high and high school where I was out on the court. So we would always be practicing and doing this. Um, so it comes back. But if I'm learning something new and something that I want to do, you know, sometimes it takes me a long time, or sometimes I just get hung up on the steps that they don't seem to flow good enough. And then I see somebody else doing it, and it's like, oh, that looks so easy. Why am I having such a hard time? And that's another part of it is getting your mind and body all in the same connection too. And I'm sure you, Catherine, have really had to go through that because of your health issues and things you've gone through, is to kind of get the mind and the body on the same wavelength so that way you could get those new habits or those new things, the new ways of doing things and handling things to come about. And um, I wonder if, you have any insights onto even how you went through that for your own personal stuff.
Well, that was just persistence, I think. Um, I would say the thing you have to be the most careful about, uh, especially with health conditions, is having repetition work against you, not for you. And what I mean by that is you have to be so aware of your thoughts, of your actions, um, even something as simple as the way you're sleeping at night. Maybe you have a certain position that you like to be in, but that position actually worsens, a condition for you. Telling yourself that you're in pain. The more you focus, even if, like, when people have a health condition, and I'm just going to bring up cancer here as a great example. A lot of people go into this warrior mode. They're going to fight this cancer. They're going to kill this cancer. They're going to win against this cancer. The problem is, the more you focus your attention on something, and the more you tell the universe that you're going to fight this thing, it matches that energy. And so actually make it worse. And I don't know how that works. All I can tell you is I have learned from experience that the more you fight against something, and I know you guys have all heard, you know, that uh, resistance is futile, and it really is, because it healing comes through surrender, and fighting against something just adds more energy to it, even if it's a health condition. And that is a very difficult thing to understand when you're going through something. Um, for me, the main component was pain. And I still deal with pain. but it's not nearly as severe as it used to be. It can get severe, but it's not severe all the time. So that's a great improvement. And I really contribute part of that to completely moving my focus away from the pain and trying to get away from the pain and trying to fight the pain and just everything was pain, and then that's where the energy goes. And then that's the universe says, oh, she wants to fight this pain, let's give her something to fight. I don't know how it works up there or out there or wherever, I really don't. I just know that I had to remove the word pain from my vocabulary, basically. I don't let, if I notice that my mind is because I'll be driving and obviously I'm paying attention to all the traffic and I'm talking to my passengers or whatever. And yay, Sandy made it. and and so when my mind is elsewhere, I'm not noticing the pain. Okay, so then all of a sudden, let's say I get a sciatica down my leg, which is really frustrating when I'm trying to drive. And I just want to scream, but I can't scream because it would scare the shit out of my passengers. So I'm just like suppressing that. And then, but it's caught my attention. In other words, the pain. So then I have a choice right there that I have to make. Am I going to keep my focus on that pain, or am I going to distract my mind into something else again? And you just you have to distract yourself, because if you're focusing on that pain, it just gets worse. And I encourage you to experiment with that. If you have headaches or some kind of pain or something, just try it sometime and just try, noticing that pain, focusing on it, and you'll see it gets worse and worse and worse. The same thing with depression, with anxiety, with all of these things that our minds get fixed on and we can't move our attention. And so I would say that's your biggest tool, is to learn how to move the attention of your mind.
Yeah, that's interesting because as you were talking about that, even though it was in about directed, about the habits and stuff, because you had to learn that habit and that ability to, so to speak, unfocus on the pain and focus on other things, but also uh, made me think about something when we were talking about earlier about where, doing the repetition and doing the things that, help build the habits. And you mentioned about the one where we went over it, where the people visualizing, the basketball, making that perfect shot and stuff. Sometimes maybe if we take kind of the two extremes of doing the repetition and doing everything, that we're supposed to do and learn to build a habit. And I think maybe part of it is in the beginning learning and building and getting the steps and the things down, so the body and the muscles and the stuff learn it, and it becomes part of that memory process. But then letting go and doing like the visualization, where we're okay, then at that point we're starting to visualize how would that perfect shot look, or how would that perfect tennis swing look, or that, and incorporating that into our whole process, so that way in getting the best result of what we're trying to work our habit into, and with taking the action to ultimately attain that habit and that goal. And I think that's something, that even just in my head, because, I've gotten stuck in that motion, you know, uh, what is it, a wheel, like gerbils that run on, where they're just constantly, running, but they're going nowhere. And I found myself in those modes sometimes. And sometimes I think I have to kind of, stop it, step off, refocus on, okay, I've got the habit down, so to speak. Now let me focus on getting to that ultimate goal and taking that habit to achieving what I want. And I think sometimes we lose the focus, and or taking the focus off. We're so focused on the little things. Like you said, you kind of have to unfocus and um, move the brain and the mind, to get refocused, so to speak. And so, going over this chapter, um, it was interesting because it just made me open, look back at some of the things I've learned, and some of the things I've done and gone through, and helps me to understand why my coaches were the way they were. Like, do this, keep doing this, keep doing that, and we're like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore, or oh, this, why do we have to do this? Can't we just go out and play? And like on the tennis court, can't we just go out and play against each other? And doesn't won't that make it, it's good enough? Now I understand, you know, the reasoning behind it, because this chapter has helped me understand that process and understand those thoughts behind it. And so hopefully going forward, it helps all of us as we, want to take on a new habit, or want to, start a new project, or want to make some changes in our lives. Kind of like, with Samantha when she was doing, starting to do the cycling thing, she took that action. She prepared and got the things she needed. She got the bike. She got, then in riding the bike, it wasn't quite still what she wanted. So then she got the videos to help, make it more, um, make it more enjoyable for to do the action. And I think that's something else we get hung up on, is in doing the action. We focus so much on, oh, why is it? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? All those things that, we forget the ultimate goal and the reason why we're doing that. So, um, anything to add on that in that area, or anything, Catherine, or even Sandy, if Sandy has a moment and wants to jump out.
I know Sandy's getting ready to go to her office, but I'm
Oh,
sure she could share many stories with us about practicing with acupuncture needles and different things like that. Yeah, I think that it's important to visualize whatever it is we're attempting to do, and see it being accomplished successfully. I think visualization is very important. Um, but again, I think just that hands-on repetition, you just get better the more you do things. You get build that muscle memory, like you said. Um, Self-defense, martial arts. That's the key. That's why they that's why they have them doing those katas or whatever they call them over and over and over, so that it just becomes second nature. And God forbid they ever have to use those skills to protect themselves. But if so, the thought process is that, if you've practiced it a million times, if someone attacks you, you're going to have the muscle memory to use those skills. Now, that doesn't always play out, because emotions get involved, and people, uh, especially someone who's never been attacked before, it's just such a shock to the system that they kind of freeze like a rabbit in the road, and just kind of, and I've seen that happen even with black belts, which is shocking to them, especially because they're like, what? I'm a black belt. I've done years of practicing and fighting. And then, the real thing comes around and I froze. And so sometimes that sort of thing happens too. But most of the time, it's like if you're on an assembly line in a factory or something, the more times you put whatever that thing is together, the faster you get at it. And the more, now sometimes you can get kind of oblivious. You have to be careful. And I know, Dan, you understand that with driving, because we all know there's been times, this has never happened to me as a rideshare driver, but when I've just been driving myself, there have been times when, like, say when I was a nurse and I drive home from work, I remember leaving the hospital. I remember driving up in my driveway, but like the in between part, I don't remember. And obviously, I was paying attention because I got there safely and I didn't get in an accident. I didn't hit anything. But as far as being in the present moment and really, paying attention to everything and being able to tell you exactly everything that happened along the way, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Now, when I have other people in my car, I'm a lot more in the moment, paying attention to every little detail. But so sometimes I think too much repetition can lead to a sense of just kind of checking out mentally too. So I guess you can, there needs to be, again, back to balance. There has to be that happy balance.
Yeah, as I stated in the chat, yeah, my morning commute a lot of times going from home to work, a lot of times my brain's just racing on so many other things or things I'm thinking about or whatever. I happen to get stuck in my brain. And like you said, I'm driving along, I'm paying attention, no issues or anything. But, next thing I know, I'm at work, I'm going, wow, it didn't seem like it took long. And I know my normal commute takes a good about 40 minutes or so to get from, because of all the lights and this and that and traffic and all that. And sometimes it's like, what? I'm here already? How'd that happen? Um, but also sometimes, like you said, just in your normal every day, you come home and you get into that routine of okay, I'm going to do this, do that, and your mind just kicks in, and the habits. And as he talks about, it says there's nothing magical about time passing with regard to habit formation. It doesn't matter if it's been 21 days or 30 days or 300 days. What matters is the rate at which you perform the behavior. You could do something twice in 30 days or 200 times. It's the frequency that makes the difference. Your current habits have been internalized over the course of hundreds, if not thousands, of repetitions. New habits require the same level of frequency, and you need to string together enough successful attempts until the behavior is firmly embedded in your mind and you cross that habit line. And so I know we all have uh, those things that we do just so automatic, and as like said, autopilot. You're really, on autopilot, like an airplane. After a plane takes off, the pilot puts it on autopilot and just kind of monitors things, but let the plane do its thing. Our brain kind of goes, on autopilot, even though it's processing 20 million, if not more than that. I don't know, things at once. Um, you know, and yet I'm just kind of zoned out, and I'm just doing whatever, and you know, I get certain things done, and it's just because of that memory, repetition, and I just remember what I'm doing and the things I need to do, and just do it, which I think serves us good, but at the same time, also does not serve us good because you know then we miss out on some things also by just being in that repetition or autopilot mode rather than, being more aware in the moment of what we're doing. And that's where we can maybe find ways to improve some of our habits or improve some of our processes that we've already got ingrained that may not be as hard to change, but if we just tweak, you know, then we can maybe make those habits a little more productive, and that would open up for us to find time to do some of those new habits that we want to form, or give us the space to introduce new things in for new habits we want to build and incorporate into our lives too. So I think we kind of covered the chapter pretty good. I was going to go over the chapter summary. It says the third law of behavior is make it easy, which we kind of covered and stuff, how to, make habits easy and, you know, um, make them attractive and make them something that we want to do rather than something that's long, arduous, or boring, something that we don't want to do. The most effective form of learning is practice, not planning. Focus on taking action, not being in motion, which is similar to the point just noted before that. Habit formation is the process by which a behavior becomes progressively more automatic through repetition. And then the amount of time you have been performing habit is not as important as the number of times you have performed it. Goes back to what Catherine was saying. Do you want a doctor that's brand new and only going through the procedure the first time and maybe may having his mentor or his supervisor or whoever there monitoring as he's doing it? Or do you want somebody that's done 500 and they know what they're doing? They, encountered as many of the different aspects that can come up and know how to respond and react. So that would be the person I would want. So, Catherine, any last thoughts or anything you want to add or throw out there?
Not really. It was a short chapter, and I think we covered it all.
Okay, well, again, this chapter, this book, is great. I'm really enjoying it and uh, love how just very quickly the chapters go and the information gets out and right to the point. And I think it makes it easier for people to want to read it and get through it. And so, with that, as always, please like, subscribe, click to join us if you want to join us, be on the panel here. You can get in touch with any of us through Facebook or Messenger or whatever to let us know, and we'll get you included in the group. You can go to our Facebook page, Mastery Mindset Collective, and look forward to hearing from you and hope you will join us again next week for another uh, mastermind on the next chapter, which will be chapter 12, the law of least effort. So, with that, have a nice day, enjoy your day, and we'll see you next week. Bye.